Hello there. Welcome to Prisoners of Truth podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the ever so goofy Bernie Sanders, and we're going to talk about the banking system. Talk about the banking system, the way it's corrupt. This is not going to be conspiratorial at all. We're going to be laying down some real facts. So anyway, here we are.
Yeah, sure. I think it's important to say that out front too, because a lot of people hear like, "Oh, we're going to be talking about the banking system," and their head goes straight to
Jews,
Jewish conspiracies,
Zionism.
the Jews. It's
Yeah.
like, no. If you've listened to us in the past, if you know anything about us, you know that that's not what we're about. That's not what we're into. We don't have Tommy today, so it's just myself, Moon, and Samo, but it'll be fun anyway. Just take a little bit of a American centric view at things, especially talking about old Bernie, the boot flap sander getting
Bernie,
back
low
into the
energy
race.
Bernie. Actually, no, I would say for his age, bracket, he's kind of high energy, but just not enough energy to contend with Trump, though.
He's not going to be able to. Yeah, he's not going to be able to follow him on the campaign trail.
No.
Just flat out, like it's just not going to happen for him.
I mean, you might as well go out trying. I mean, try again. What is this? The third time he's run, or is this second?
I don't know if it's the third or second, but remember. I do know that, like, with the field, I agree with you. I don't think it's like a crazy thing for him to run. Like, he's basically got 30. It's crazy to think about this. Sticks Hexenhammer mentioned this today, but it's crazy to think that, like, Bernie Sanders entering the race.
Yeah, hang on. Like, we got somebody in the chat. Invictus Libertas says hello. Hey there. How's it going?
What's up,
Sorry to interrupt.
Anyway, no, you're good.
Yeah.
I was just saying it's funny how Bernie Sanders is like the almost the most liked Democratic candidate. It's like he's not even a Democrat, right?
I know.
He's burning fucking Sanders.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's just like, man, I feel bad for him because, remember the State of the Union speech when Trump was like, socialism will never happen. And what is he going to do? What would you do if you were Bernie? I don't even know.
I mean, lose to Donald Trump. I don't know. I don't even know that the DNC will.
He should just like write a book. He should write a book about like just being the biggest clown.
Write a book about his honeymoon in the Soviet Union. How crazy of a person do you have to be to take a goddamn vacation in the Soviet Union?
Oh my gosh! Yeah, why would you? Yeah, I don't get it. But I don't know, comrades. I think maybe he'll succeed in the revolution. I don't think so. I think it's interesting. I'm glad to see. I'm sorry to say it to any Democrats out there, but I'm very happy to see the Democratic Party fragment in this way. I mean, Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez. Oh my gosh! If you talk about self-sabotage, yeah,
it's something we've absolutely been pointing out for a long time. The divide in the Democratic Party is deep. It's fundamental. It comes right down to their policy goals. Just honestly, the policy goals of the neoliberal Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Democrats are not the policy goals of the progressives, and they share the same party. Like it's so fundamental that anything, especially in the realm of like the election, is just going to call attention to it and further divide people. I mean, look, progressives already don't like the corporate liberals, and the corporate liberals already don't like the sort of brash AOC wing of the party. It's not going to get better.
No, not at all. So, I'm interested to see what happens. What is the Democrats' strongest runner? What, Joe Biden? That's he's
not even in the race right now.
He's not
Bernie
even
Sanders.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Now,
so just right.
As soon as Biden declares, though, he would be the front runner, a lot like what Bernie Sanders is doing right now. Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren are kind of in the middle there, and then you've got the Gillibrands and all the other Bookers and nameless fate. Like, these people are at this point.
What do we have? Beto? Is Beto going to be running?
I don't know
too?
if Beto's running. I don't think he has announced. I mean, it's clear that he's been posturing for it, but like the general
Cory Booker thinks he wants to run. You hear about that? Cory Booker said he's going to run, I think.
Yeah, Cory Booker's running.
He's got
Gillibrand. Yeah, a bunch of goons. Really, there's no cohesive, real vision behind the Democratic Party except for Trump bad, Wall bad, Wall no work, Oh, Orange Man, very bad.
Yeah, it's I don't know. And then there's another guy who's gonna run. His name's Andrew Yang. He wants to have UBI, Universal Basic Income, because like his whole point is that automation is gonna take jobs. I don't really like that guy. I mean, the only thing that he really seems to campaign on is like, hey, free money. Um,
Yeah,
so I don't know. It just seems like the Democrats. I mean,
Tommy would probably like him.
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that could be. So I don't know. I mean, the concept of universal basic income, I don't really like that concept. I think it's probably something that's going to happen in the future, and if it was going to happen, there's got to be a good way of doing it. But at this point, I don't think that universal basic income is the best way to react to automation. We
Yeah, and
should
I would say
be
especially in America,
yeah,
I think it could be potentially
we should be
worked out in other
allocating
places.
I feel like we should be allocating that manpower over to other projects like infrastructure, roads,
For sure.
bridges, things like that.
Yeah,
So
indirectly subsidize people and growth instead of the government just shelling out money, which,
yep.
actually kind of transitions really well into the banking system. If you wanted to kind of move into that.
Yeah, we could talk about that. I mean, honestly, from everything that I've researched, I feel like if you follow the money, you find all the problems. I think most of the problems in the world have been perpetuated by the banking system, and we could talk about that.
Well, exactly. And the cartels, I mean, there's very real banking cartels in the world, basically conglomerations of national banks that are run by private entities, and they have very similar interests, and those interests are not very good for normal people. But in America, that looks like the Federal Reserve System. And the entire conception of private central banking is just evil to me. I mean, just the cons because that's why we have a Treasury Department. I mean, the Treasury Department is there to sell American bonds, to print money, and to control the economy in a way that is not communistic, but you know more on the level of just having a nation, allowing free markets and monies to exist. And we have this third aspect. The Federal Reserve is what it's called in America, but really all that is, when you get down to the basic function, is a private entity
Yeah, there's
being
nothing federal
responsible
about
for the
it.
money. No, it's a private entity responsible for printing money. The way it works is the Federal Reserve, again, a private entity, prints money, American money, used by the American government and the rest of the world as a reserve currency for fossil fuels at this point, and many other things. Uh, it's being traded to our own Treasury Department for Treasury bonds. The Treasury Department writes Treasury bonds and trades them to the federal government, excuse me, to the Federal Reserve. And then here's the kicker: at interest. So every dollar that the Federal Reserve is giving over to us is attached to some inherent form of debt. And while debt is not necessarily evil, like the concept of debt is not bad, but the concept of enslaving an entire nation to debt is bad.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's just like there's a lot of spooky stories, like just like the way that the Federal Reserve was formed. It was really, really interesting, and it's just it, when was it created? Like
Early 1900s, I
early
think it was like
1900s.
the
Like
teens, I think. And it was just a group of high-powered, you know, government people and banking industry people who got together in Jekyll Island.
yeah, I think well
And
it was members of government and members of the corporate system. I think that they sort of converged in
yeah,
secrecy. You
and it wasn't, and this isn't the first time this has happened. There was the first and second banks of the United States, which were the same thing as the Federal Reserve, a third party entity in control of printing and the money. And also the other important aspect of the Fed is fixing interest rates.
yes,
Well, how do they do that? What interest rate are they basically fixing? They're basically fixing the base interest rate at which they're trading paper to our government. At no point should that happen. Our government should have interest free money because it's a currency meant to facilitate economic transactions.
right.
If you when you add that extra layer, it it becomes much more of a abusive style of actually printing money, and it's abusive to the people who are using the banking system and the money at the smallest levels.
Okay, yeah. So sorry, one of our viewers said the Fed was started in 1914. All right, thank you
Yep,
for that.
the early
Sorry.
teens,
Yep.
and no, and so yeah, essentially you've got a situation where uh, the financial interests of America are not within the control of the American people. There's at some level there is some oversight of the Fed, but not very much.
Right.
There's
Right. No,
almost none. I mean, there's some, but it's very little.
I mean, I think like even JFK tried going against the Fed, which is kind of interesting. And he wasn't a big fan of them. A lot of people have been critical of the Fed, and yeah, for me, it's just like I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if there's ever going to be anything done about it. I mean, I was a big believer in like cryptocurrencies and stuff like that, but even that, I mean, people are going to find ways to control it. So, I mean, I wonder if I've heard even Trump say things. I've heard him be a bit critical about the Federal Reserve, and I wonder if
Well,
he's
for
going to do
sure.
anything. Yeah,
I mean, at the very least, I don't think that Trump's going to go after the Fed,
no,
because I just it's not a part of his platform. It's not a part of his lexicon of political issues. I mean, he has spoken out against interest rate hikes,
yeah,
which at a certain level is exerting some sort of pressure on the Fed. But I don't think he's going to dismantle it. I don't think he's going to go after it. You know,
but I think if we can like flip the script a little bit, like obviously the elite are mad about Trump being anti-war. So I think if we maybe operate differently, we get a different movement going on in the country. It's all about who is like a part of the Fed and all that. So I don't know if maybe we can get momentum turning around and the economy shifting in a positive way. Hopefully other people will just have to adapt to what's going on. You know what I mean?
yeah, and it's even beyond the Federal Reserve too, because
Right.
it actually goes down to the very structure of our banking system. Central banking is essentially to say there's one central currency. There's one currency, no other current. You can't. There's no states aren't printing their money. Individuals aren't allowed to just create currency and trade it for things based on their own ability to give value to people. We operate under a central banking system. So that itself, right there, is in my mind not the best way to run financial currency, because you almost bind yourself to the idea of fiat, which is to say your money's not really backed by anything. It's just numbers on a computer. There's no actual hard commodity that you can trade your dollar for on a basic level. I mean, you can trade it for all the commodities in the world, but you can't go to a bank and say, give me gold for this, give me diamonds for this. It's not backed by anything, not
Yeah.
backed by any specific commodity.
Now there was a
And
time when you used to be able to go into the bank and you could ask for the silver's worth in your currency. Is
of course, your
interesting.
silver or your gold note. And then also there was a time when you could go into a bank that printed their own money and had their own currency.
Hmm.
And that is something that I'm not really sure if it was great or not so great, or if it would work in today's age, but it just gets people thinking on a fundamental level about what currency is and why it's really run the way it is in today's world. Like
Yeah.
the
It's
concept of having economic lubricant to move your economy is not something that has to be controlled by the government.
well, yeah, and yeah, the dollar has lost a lot of value. But here's something interesting: is if you have a silver dollar from back in the day, because they actually used to put silver in it. If you have a silver dollar and you sell it for its value in silver, you can buy as much gas today as you could have like in the 1930s. So if you want to do an experiment like that, it kind of really shows you how our money has really depreciated. But there used to be real value behind it, and money went a very long way. I think if you look at like just the history of our currency in general, I think it's lost like what over 90% of its value.
Yeah. Oh, it's not even close to what it used to be worth. And the entire concept having sound currency or just having not fiat currency. And again, it doesn't have to be gold. It can be anything. I
Right.
mean, it can be anything of value that you want to back the currency with. But what it does is it forces banks and the banking system to actually hold those reserves for people because this is the and then we're about to get into the real evil part that in my personal opinion, of the
Hmm.
banking system, which is the concept of fractional reserve banking. So, and this can only exist in a fiat system. This can only exist in a system where the money really doesn't mean anything other than numbers in a computer and how many paper notes you can have.
Hmm.
Um, Essentially, what I'm describing, which is what we all live under, and which is what we all experience, is a system where banks do not have to hold in reserves the amount of cash that they're loaning out. So, if you had a solid currency that was backed by gold, and you had a bank, uh, that bank's reserves would be full of people's gold and their money because they're going to come in and you're going to have for every dollar that you are loaning out, you're going to have actual reserves to back it up. In fractional reserve banking, they can loan out as much money, not as much money. I think it's 10 to 1, maybe
Yeah,
more
10
in
to
some
1.
circumstances, but they can lend out an exorbitant amount more per dollar that they're holding in reserves. And again, it's only because there's no actual hard commodity backing it up. And so you get a situation where banks can print
Hmm.
monies, the Federal Reserve can print monies, and you're basically left with a big wide open gap of abuse. I mean,
Yeah, it's a
it,
scam. I think even some banks now have rules where they say they want you to have a minimum of $500 in your bank account. So they can just keep loaning that shit. It's ridiculous.
exactly. And
Uh,
and
yeah.
it is ridiculous.
See, I think because we do need currency because if this is like we didn't have currency, you want to eat, you want to do anything, you got to go out and forage for it. The point of currency is to basically
Take us off the barter.
monetize labor, and people get paid or whatever, and you can get all the things that you need, without having to bust your ass and do everything. You don't have to live like like people did back in the day. And but like yeah, so that's the convenience. So there's like a serious convenience factor in it. Like we do need currency, but you know what? When you really look at the banking system, the people that are printing, the people that control the money, they're really kind of finessing us. Like they're basically, what am I trying to say? It's like it's a means of theft, you know what I mean? So it's like there are really people profiting that don't really lift a finger to do anything. They hardly even help society, but they're like prospering off of the working class's labor, basically.
Sure. And to some extent, that is necessary with currency. To some extent, there are going to be, blue collar or, white collar jobs that are not, like you described, not, you're not digging a hole, you're not doing something physical, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But
Right.
with our current system, those particular professions are in a position where the actual banking system and financial system is is parasitic.
I, I
And I
mean,
know
yeah.
that's really crazy because, like, I mean, that sounds really anti-capitalistic, but it's not because what I'm talking about with free open banking and having a real hard currency is much more capitalistic than what we have now, and sort of this play pretend
Yeah.
fiat garbage.
Well, in like another way you can see some of the evil that's happened recently is in like 2008, people were losing their houses because these big banks were gambling with people's mortgages. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy to me when you think about the housing crisis that happened in 2008.
Yeah, a lot of real world hurt because of bad banking practices, and uh, you know, to some extent that is driven by bad choices made by individuals, but those choices were allowed to them by predatory lending, by subprime predatory lending, where banks were just incentivized to get as much money out there as they could, regardless of if anybody could pay it back. Then they bundled all the mortgages together, sold those off, and next thing you've got a housing bubble.
Yeah. And
A
then
lot of this is a little bit like people just kind of tune out and their eyes go blank when the financial stuff starts coming out.
mhm.
But it's so close to the problems we're having right now.
Well, yeah,
Like it's
and Trump is like a response to this because we had, we had the housing crisis, we've had countless wars in the Middle East, we've just seen so much incompetence in our past leadership, and when you think about it, it's like after all that, after we gave Obama a chance, people just had enough already, and I just think, in a way, Trump is a response, not in the sense that he's going to, dismantle the Federal Reserve. But, he is in place. It's a response. It's the people. He's like representing the people that have had enough of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely a lot of frustration behind the Trump movement, and you know he's doing his best on many of the issues that got him elected. He didn't get elected on changing the financial system. I mean, he didn't
No,
get elected on ending fractional reserve banking. And he didn't get election on ending the
it's
Fed.
just
Obviously, the
everybody
Fed
knows there's something wrong in the
exactly.
country, and we want to just kind of figure it out. Like even like when I think about Trump, even when he got in, I could easily see his mentality being like, even to himself, like we know there's deeper problems. Let's go in here and let's figure it out. That's kind of what he's doing. I feel like he's trying to figure it out with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Maybe not. Maybe
He
I'm
does a
being,
lot of A/B testing. He
yeah,
does a lot of seeing what people think about his policies and changing based on that. So yeah, fundamentally you're correct, and I think it's one of the things that separates him from most politicians. He is willing to change his policy positions and his stances based on how his supporters are feeling about it and thinking about it. He's got an ear to the people who put him in power, which is so weird for our time. What politician gives a fuck what voters think? It's not
yeah,
it's not the game they play anymore. As it Trump's brought them back to it, they don't give a fuck about what their voters think. What do they care about?
right,
They care about their corporate donors. They care about their fucking cushy job, and they care about being able to look at their voters in their face and being able to just say, "Look, I did this. I did that. Look, oh, vote for me
yeah.
again." And in some cases, voter turnout is so low in certain areas. It's just silly the amount of unresponsiveness these politicians are allowed to get away with.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like it sounds cliche, we hear it a lot, but just with Trump being in business, having to work, like when you're in business, you need to like be able to compromise, figure things out. Most of the people that we've seen in office, you look at Bush and Obama, I'll just go to them. They were like limp wristed, dudes that haven't really done anything with their lives. They don't really have experience in the real world. So those individuals, I think to them, like they just look at it as, I'm just going to stick to my plan. I'm going to get it done. It's going to be fine. But I think, we've seen a lot of politicians that haven't had to deal with situations that have given them skills to be able to be humble enough to listen to things. And it's kind of funny saying like humble. I'm not quite saying that Trump is completely humble, but he seems like a guy who's able to listen to what people have to say. And if he needs to compromise to get the objective done, like he will go back and look into it and try and reconfigure a deal that works for everybody.
Yeah, which is so funny because if you think about what you just laid out, it's 100% true. But if you asked your average Trump hater, and I'm not even calling them Democrats anymore, just Trump haters,
Right.
because that's just what they are. If you ask your average Trump hater, they're going to tell you the exact opposite, and based on nothing but lies in the media. I mean, it's a really crazy the sheer amount of Trump's persona, the amount of hatred he gets is based not even on his actions or views. It's not based on anything in reality. I mean, if you really get down and dirty with a lot of these people, they can't even fucking tell you why they hate him so much.
Well, yeah.
What they can't even give you a reason, and they
Well,
spout off some talking points. And when you push back on it, I mean, it's nothing. It's like talking to a goddamn toddler sometimes.
well, actually, Scott Adams recently did a video where he let his viewers call in, and he said, "I want people who are opposed to the wall to call in, and I want to talk to you about it." And so what he was trying to do was bring the cognitive dissonance like out of the person. Like he wanted to show examples of cognitive dissonance. And he would basically ask them, questions about it. Why do you oppose it? and they'd always get to this point where they sort of just like would freeze up and they would just kind of like melt down, like they couldn't tell you why they were against it, you know?
No, because they don't know. That's the
Right.
thing is that more and more it's seeming to me like the gap between people who hate Trump and who maybe don't support him but aren't going to sit there and call him a racist, orange,
Yeah,
bigot,
well,
homophobe
right.
is just information. It's just the
Well,
amount of information you have and how much time you've looked into it, how much you
usually,
actually care to have the truth. A lot of people don't care if they have the truth. They
right.
just want their opinions to be validated.
And most of these are people that when they see the news and they think of the news, they see like Brian Stelter or, Anderson
Rachel
Cooper,
Maddow,
and they're
all
like,
these
oh, they're
idiots.
so professional, they're so academic, they're so their oratory skills are so good that you'd think that some of them might have been trained by the CIA.
Well,
I
Cooper
don't know. It
definitely was.
sounds like a wild thing. I don't think anything like that would ever happen.
I
No,
mean,
I think yeah, he's a Vanderbilt for one, Cooper.
Cooper is
Yeah.
definitely in deep with somebody. I don't know. I
I
mean,
swear, I think even Obama was like CIA trained on how to talk the way he would talk like this in bullet points, and he'd just break it down. Like it was just strange. Like I don't know, some of these people who are just bred into their positions, it's just strange the way.
well, yeah, I mean, and it's a separation from meritocracy, which is, the golden rule in my book. I mean, I don't think that there's any other system that makes sense. It's like talking to people who are intersectional and social justice minded, and they literally want to um, they literally want to base performance in certain areas of life and income in certain areas of life on your fucking immutable characteristics. Your the fucking set of junk you were born with or the tone of your skin. It's like, at what point do you not realize how racist you're being? Like, at what point does some self-awareness not creep in? And it's funny, I'm on Gab now because I'm not on Twitter, but I'm triggering socialists on Gab just like I used to trigger socialists on Twitter, but these are national socialists instead of pink-haired social justice warriors.
Okay,
Um,
so sort of the same thing, but just a little different flavor, huh?
yeah, just they're both racist, but they just hate different people.
Right.
And it's so funny. I made a post that was pretty much just like Margaret Sanger was a racist eugenicist who wanted to see all black people dead. Gun control was a racist Jim Crow era law to keep black people from having guns. And tell me who the party of the real racists are again, because the only people I see worshiping Margaret Sanger and begging for gun control are the
See,
Democrats.
here's the way I look at the far left. So you look at history, the civil rights era. Basically, the way that blacks were treated by the Democrats, that was the Democrats running a beta test. It was almost like a microcosm, if you will, of the way they kind of wanted to rule everybody. So like that's the thing that people don't kind of understand is there's this shift going on where yes, the left appears to be very progressive, but once they get their own way, they would love to have a system where they could treat all of us like that. That's what I really think. Like they
Sure.
want to treat their citizens the way that blacks were treated in the past. And if you really think about it, I mean, with the intersectionality and the obsession of it, they're basically trying to segregate us all in our minds. But the point of segregation for these kind of individuals is it just makes it easier to manage a group of citizens.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so much of authoritarianism is about that. It's something inherently designed to control people, and the people who are interested in that are in our current era are the Democrats. And it's funny that they wear this sort of shield, if you will, of like, oh, humanitarian care. Oh, we care about this, we care about that, we care so much. Give us all the power so we can have control. It's like anybody who's anybody who is going to look at the Democratic Party platform deep enough, and anybody who is going to compare that to their actual goals, um, should have some level of cognitive dissonance going on, or at least be able to say like those two things are disconnected. And because of that, it's pretty easy to see that they're disingenuous. And not to say that this is a partisan issue. Politicians in general tend to be disingenuous because of the system that we've built to this point. We need to get we need to get certain elements out of our reigns of power, so to speak, the financial reigns of power, the political reigns of power. There's some very bad eggs.
Yeah, no, I would agree. So, okay, I was going to ask you. So, back to the Federal Reserve subject. When was it that you kind of started looking into all of that? Just the way the structure of our banking system. Like, what prompted you to look into that?
Well, it kind of all started in like I guess probably 2012.
Yeah, that's probably around the time I was getting into really researching that stuff.
So
Kind of
I
interesting.
started with 9/11 conspiracy truth, and I have my own views on that.
Right.
It's its own topic on its own, but definitely something fishy going on with 9/11.
Hmm.
And that led me down the sort of rabbit hole of what the Federal Reserve is, what central banking is, why it's been implemented, all over the world. Because again, this is not an American issue. I mean, the International Monetary Fund is and the Bank of Europe and Deutsche Bank, and there's just a group of people operating under an abusive, I don't know, system. I mean, it's
Yeah.
corrupted too, because the conception of banking and having a bank and having somebody lending money is not in and of itself bad. It's just when it's been corrupted.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting, now that you're talking about this. That's actually how I started getting into researching about globalism because I looked into the banking system and I was like, oh wow, it's like this. It's really interesting. It's like there's these different groups within different levels of society. So you have those who are like kind of like globalists, and they're trying to figure out how to get a network going. And I think it really started with the banking system, the way that business is done. You look at those who are globalists, and a lot of them seem to be corporatist, like elite members of the government. So it's like there's this kind of this wait and see thing going on where they're implementing um, it in different, I guess it's like an incremental thing that's going on.
Sure, boiling the frog. It's the way to do it. I mean, and it's on that same note, it's not something that can be fixed overnight. It's not really something that can be fixed by one person.
Hey
It's not really
Valerie,
something.
we just saw that you joined the chat. Nice to see you.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, Valerie's
It's not.
Will's sister.
Oh, hi, Valerie.
Yep. But anyway, sorry to
Um,
interrupt you.
No, no problem. I was just saying it's not something that is going to get fixed in overnight. It's not something that's going to get fixed with an election or with a person.
I mean, and
It's
these are just
something that has.
aspects. Go ahead. Something that has
I
what?
was just saying it's something that has to be. The people in the society have to be aware with it on a massive scale in order for things like fractional reserve banking and central banking to be actually repealed.
I mean, all it really is like being aware of human nature. Because if you think about it, it's not, like you look at the banking system, it's not this crazy grand conspiracy. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, when you play a game and you're playing it to win, some people will do whatever it takes to make sure that they have leverage or an advantage. So it's like it doesn't really take a whole lot. It's all about, looking into things, being aware of, the ease of corruption and just trying to like resist against it. I don't know.
Sure, and you're right. It doesn't have to be a grand conspiracy. In fact, it probably isn't a grand conspiracy. It's a
No.
coalescence of different powerful people's self-interests. I mean, when powerful interests align, it's only natural for those powerful interests to seek what's going to increase their wealth and their power. I mean, it's not even that in and of itself is not inherently evil. It just has to be curbed,
Right.
and there has to be a level of and I really think it just comes down to knowledge. And I don't know if it'll ever get fixed. I don't know if we'll ever go back to a banking system that makes sense. I don't know if the Treasury Department will ever actually represent monetary sovereignty for the American people ever again, because it's something so technical and deep, and not a lot of people can wrap their heads around it. And even if they can wrap their heads around it, a lot of people don't care. And um, I just don't see it being fixed unless there's an overwhelming amount of people who understand the problem, see clearly that we can fix it, and
Hmm.
again, it's not an election. Like the president's not going to come along and be like, "All right, Federal Reserve's over."
Right.
Rand Paul might if we're lucky, but I don't think Rand Paul's ever going to get in.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But
I would vote for him though.
for sure. And the other thing, what else? There's another thing I wanted to mention on this that's kind of interesting. It'll come back to me. Continue.
No, I
Uh,
was just going to sum up. It's a coalescence. The big problems with the banking system are the confluence of private central banking, fractional reserve banking, and fiat currency. Those three things take a system which should allow an economy to have good lubrication, to have good amount of lending for certain things that really allow a banking system to be beneficial, because it is beneficial to have currency, to have bankers, to have people who are lending money and able to profit off that too. I don't think that usury is inherently evil. I mean, it can be at certain levels, but the idea of charging interest, it's in of itself doesn't need to be gotten rid of. What needs to be gotten rid of is a third party printing our money, the central bank. We need to get rid of
yeah, we got to get rid of
fiat
that.
currency, and this practice of fractional reserve banking is really where all the corruption comes in. I mean, it's not, and again, it's a situation where not a lot of people are really going to be super interested in fixing this problem because it's deep.
Well, and you know what? I was thinking about this. You know how socialists or communists, whatever, whenever they're critical about capitalism, they go, well, look at this and look at that. Well, I think a lot of things that people on the left are kind of blaming and talking about, these are fixable things. I don't think it's necessarily inherent in capitalism. I think that, there are evils in capitalism, but I feel like the evils of like straight up communism greatly outweigh the evils of capitalism. And
Sure, and
and
a
I,
lot of the anti-capitalists are not even complaining about things that are problems because of capitalism.
right,
They're complaining about things that are problems because of big monopolies and big trusts. And these things are inherently anti-capitalistic. Our government's not breaking up monopolies. Our government's not applying antitrust laws. Especially in the information technology sector, it's
right.
just not happening. And a lot of the problems that you see with income inequality, a lot of the problems you see with everything you would hear just a fucking smelly hippie bitch about and then blame it all on capitalism is
Right.
going to have almost nothing to do with a free market or open banking system. They have absolutely no conception of the fact that they're actually criticizing things that are anti-capitalistic.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting stuff for sure.
Smelly
Um
hippies, man. What are you gonna
yeah. Hey man, end the Fed, man. Gotta end
do?
the Fed, man. We gotta have socialism, man. But well, okay. We got Valerie said, "I'm a smelly hippie and I love capitalism." Well, it's all
Heyo,
right. Hey, you're on the.
representing smelly hippies.
Hey, as long as you're not a communist, that's fine.
Oh yeah.
We're
Well,
just
and then
joking
people
anyway. We're
they
we're
just
kind of
it's like
hippies in a way anyway.
oh yeah, I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm very much I'm more libertarian, which is more hippie than the modern day hippies. I mean, modern day hippies want government control and war. I mean, I don't want our country to invade anybody, and I don't want them to abuse anybody. And then I'm
Oh
the
yeah.
Nazi.
So
I'm the
Valerie says most of the other dirty hippies I know are very anti-socialism. So that's good to know.
Good to
You're hanging
hear.
out with
Good to hear the
the
dirty
right
hippies are
hippies.
turning it around.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it
Really
looks
making
like
a play.
our hippies are right wingers now. I guess the left
Well,
could say
because
that.
because that's what's cool, man. That's what's underground, man.
Yeah,
It's true though that the counterculture has definitely gone to the right wing because the control in the media and the popular narrative is just so lock,
it's
stock, and barrel
honestly, you
Democrat.
really want to ask me what's going on. I think I know I'm butchering this, but I feel like the left has gone right and the right has gone left. If you really look at what's going on, and it's just Overton window sort of stuff. It's hard. Like you can kind of look at it in all kinds of different ways. I'm probably not expressing it correctly, but that's the way it feels to me in my gut sometimes.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And
Well, no,
it's
what's going on is one side ended up becoming more authoritarian and the other side more libertarian. I think that's really what's going on.
yeah, and I mean, we've talked about in the past like our own perfect structures, and you know, I really like America. I think it's the best country on this entire face of the earth. You know, I personally would like to see more power given to municipalities and states so that this sort of laboratory of democracy can be truly that, something where people experiment and try out different ways of writing laws and and even to my mind, it should be given all the way down to financial systems and all this, because
Yeah,
not only are certain things going to work certain places and not others, but as long as you're operating on a basic framework that is federal and says, okay, you can't abuse people, you can't go too far away from the I don't want Alabama to be able to be like a communist dictatorship, but I do want Alabama to be able to vote on their own maybe state interest rate. I would like interstate commerce to be bigger in the world of insurance. There's lots of things that could happen with our current system to make it better.
hmm agreed. Yeah, I would agree with you there. And let's see. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else you wanted to cover in this on this subject?
I'm pretty exhausted on the banking subject. I
Yeah, I
mean,
think
that's
we've
pretty
gone
much
over that
it.
quite a
I mean,
bit.
without getting into the kind of deeper, maybe conspiratorial roots of banking itself, and the 1600s, and going way back and doing a deep dive. I mean, in the modern context, I think we've done a really good job of laying it out.
Yeah. No, yeah, I would agree with you there. And it's interesting, a lot of these things that we're discussing, if we were talking about this 8 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever, there wasn't much awareness about it. It was interesting because I remember when I was looking into it back in the day, looking into it as Eddie Bravo would say, what was I going to say? Yeah, I thought it sounded like very conspiratorial. But, as the years have gone on, there's been enough evidence in recent history that kind of confirms this stuff. I mean, imagine trying to research this even, 20 years ago. It's probably just like would have sounded like fantasy.
Well, the internet helps a lot with that. I mean, the internet and the ability to have access to information and access to instant communication and information storage has made it really, really easy to be a historian, to be somebody who you know, does a lot of reading and does a lot of consuming of good information. Obviously there's a lot of bad info out there, but the internet is a very, very powerful tool. And, I think we're just beginning to see the way it's going to help shape our society, because relatively very new thing, the internet.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you think about like back in the 1940s when people would listen to the radio every day to hear the news. Could you like these people wouldn't have ever imagined in their lives that we'd see a time where you'd have a couple goofballs broadcasting their opinions on YouTube, on the internet. I mean, you look at it, you've got like the whole podcast thing is blowing up. Where just a few years ago, you look at a podcast, you think it's this professional type thing, and now there's technology for just anybody to create a podcast about anything, and it costs you virtually nothing. So it's a really exciting time where people can kind of talk about things that we've all been researching and kind of connect certain dots.
Yeah, and through that comes the development of, because now you can talk to people about your interests, and now you can develop relationships, and depending on what you know, your interests are and what you're into, and even on an academic level, it provides a very, very productive space for new ideas, for new technologies even. I mean, people are utilizing the internet in a way where I think some people call it like accelerationism,
Okay.
but I think that the internet is um, essentially moving humanity to a peaceful point very quickly.
Well, we're definitely witnessing, what is it, a fourth industrial revolution right now. So there's a lot of things going on, um, you know, with technology, and I think things have improved in the sense of just people communicating with each other. We got kind of quite a few obstacles, ahead of us, and kind of the debate going on is how long is the internet going to stay free? How long is it that information is going to be widely accessible? Because, there are entities and groups that want to censor all this stuff.
Sure, and there's also a big group called the Chinese Communist Party that is very involved with censoring technology and building tech out and to be something that's dystopian and used to control people and used to control information. And yeah, who knows? I mean,
Google is working with them. Google is assisting them. I without a doubt, I'm sure that Google, Apple, and other tech companies are helping China kind of build their network for, because they want to be the leaders of AI, which is just that's a horrifying thought. You look at the way the Chinese treat their own citizens, the Chinese government, So
yeah,
who knows what's gonna happen, but it is nice to see the energy with different countries. You look at the Yellow Vest movement, all these movements going on in Europe. So there definitely is. We're in a point where people are really starting to become mobilized, and I didn't even think we'd even see that ever. So
it's very heartening.
Yeah,
good things are happening.
So this is a little bit of a shorter stream, but is there anything else you want to talk about? You want to wrap it up?
Without Tommy here, I think that's about right for a normal stream. Tommy would give us probably another 20 minutes based on what he had to say about it, and I think that's right where we're at. Right, we're probably right at about 50 minutes.
Yep. Well, everybody, thank you for watching this episode. We will be back next week. Not sure what we'll be talking about, but I'm sure it'll be good. There's probably going to be some drama going on next week. So anyway, thank you for listening, everybody. Hope you have a good rest of your day, and we will see you later. Bye.
See you later, guys.